We are live.
All right. I'm going to call the meeting to order then. It's 3:02. Ann Passes is here. Tracy? Who is in charge of unmuting people?
Individuals.
Oh, okay. You're muted, Tracy.
Oh, there we go.
There
I'm a
you are.
WebEx user, okay? The Zoom thing. Where is that located at? No cats allowed.
Hi, you're here. You're here for the meeting. Roll call.
Yeah.
All right. And then we also have a guest, Nancy Kelly from SIMPA. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need to approve the consent agenda. Mike, how should this work?
Yeah,
This
we're
is
missing.
my first full meeting here.
Yeah. So let's just make sure everybody knows what it is, right? It's a list of things you don't feel need discussion. You can pass them all with one motion. There's only two of you today. Craig's not going to be here, so you're the chairperson, Ann, but you can still make motions and seconds and vote on things. So
Right.
you can decide, do you want to take turns or do you want to make Tracy do all the motions today? Up to you two.
Just like Craig and I, we'll just bat it back and forth. Is that it?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. So then I probably need to make a motion to accept the consent agenda. Is that right?
Yep. And
Okay.
I will second it, and then I'll call for a vote. Tracy?
Aye.
And aye. Okay. Then the next item is load control. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Who's leading this discussion? I don't think it's me.
I'll give it a stab.
Okay.
So this was on your agenda last time, of course.
Yep.
And in response to that, we put together the memo in your packet to provide you with some background information. And you also have, in the meantime, received at least one or perhaps two more communications from customers who are in this position. So if there's any questions you have about the kind of the backstory, I guess maybe this would be a good time to ask them. Otherwise, we can just get into what do you think?
Just really quick, Mike. I think I only have one. Is there someone else besides the church? That's all I'm aware of. Are you thinking there's more and I don't, we need to?
Yeah, I don't have another one either, and I know you can't say who or what it is, but
Or are we okay? And that's
Well, we'll make sure that if there was one that you didn't get, we send it to you. But I think that this discussion is probably best had as a policy rather than as a response to individual requests in any case. So,
okay. So we're not missing anything then.
I don't think you're missing anything
Okay.
that you need to
All right.
talk about this, no.
Okay. That's the only reason I asked.
okay. So can we just have a discussion, or does one of us need to make a motion before we discuss, or can we just talk about it first?
I don't think we are too strict about Robert's rules on any of the boards that I'm
Okay.
involved in. So.
All right, awesome. Well, Tracy, I don't know what you were thinking, but I kind of feel like between the, COVID has upended everyone's lives, both professionally and personally in so many ways. And, including, things, have changed at the PUC as they have everywhere as far as being able to get things done. And then kind of combining that with my personal feeling that that the communication could have been more assertive and clear about the rate. So I would really like to see us do something. I would like to see us lean toward the forgiving end of this, because I think we're partially responsible for confusion, in all honesty.
Something more, Ann, or?
No.
Okay. I totally agree that communications was not enough, nor well thought out, nor follow up. And COVID or not, people could continue to get this work done if they needed to, especially if they're the ones that need to get the electrician in. All those kinds of people continue to work throughout this whole time frame. And it's not ours to assume that they wouldn't pursue this just because it was COVID. And if it's our job to finally inspect or review the finished product and make sure it's in place and works, then we need to have a communications plan and just a plan in general to follow up with these people, really engage to make sure it's not that many people, and get a definitive yes or no. What are you going to do? And continue to work with them, make sure and if the final is that you, or I don't mean you personally, but if the PUC or city needs to inspect or make sure everything is functioning right, then let's get a plan and make sure that gets done. Someone needs to do that, and we need to meet these people halfway. I'm not so sure a total let's give all the money back kind of deal, but a halfway mark, and anticipate that, to me, one customer isn't any more special than another. So we should anticipate that we can apply this somewhat universally, would be my thought. But we need to be more engaging with our customers.
Yeah, that jives pretty well with what I thought. Mike, what's your thinking?
Well, to respond to that, if that's what you want us to do, I think we probably want to come back to your next meeting with a plan then that talks about how we're going to communicate with the remaining customers and what we're going to do to get the load control receivers installed. So, I mean, in any case, I think that's what you're asking for. So we'll do that. In the meantime, there's maybe a distinction between the customers that have reached out to us and the 33 that we haven't heard from. So if there's a policy that you want us to have where we're going to do some sort of rebates of those surcharges, whether it's partially or all of it, we're going to make an attempt to connect with the next 33 people, and we may or may not be successful with that. We don't necessarily have good contact info, and so we'll do our best to reach out to everybody, but at some point we may not be able to reach some of them, even if we're knocking on doors, and in some reasonable amount of time. So
Sure.
Beyond that, then we've got a waiting list of folks right now, that are looking to get this installed. And so part of our plan that we'll present to you is how long we think it's going to take us to go through that process. Our assumption about electricians not wanting to work is definitely based on our own experience of trying to get an electrician, and not an assumption that customers won't be able to do this. So I think that's something that'll have to be included in our plan for you to think about next month as well, is if we ask our customers to do some work with an electrician, how much time do they get before we have to do some sort of follow-up response with them? And then for those customers that haven't met that follow-up response, are we then going to take them off the rate, or have them sign up in the future? Or for those customers where we inspect their facility and find that they don't meet our requirements and that they need to do some follow-up work, how much time is there going to need to be for them to get that done before we'll have to remove them from our rates in the future? So those are the issues I think we'll have to try and address in our plan that we'll put in front of you next month.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, to me, these if you have a customer who's special or different, for the lack of a better way to say it, we should have very good contact information with them to say that we somehow can't get a hold of these people, knowing they have equipment that could fail or not work correctly. And, in that sense, they're different about how things are moving. We should have, emails, phone numbers with every single one of them. And that maybe that's part of this process going forward, is they have to make sure they're supplying that kind of contact information so that you can get a hold of them if something isn't right or whatever. That should be part of the plan. And I agree, at some point, it just needs to be done. And some of that, though, they have to do, right? They have to schedule. It's not the city has to do something. They need to do something, right, as far as equipment. Do I have that right?
Yes and no. It certainly can be that way. We've been a part of it with all the customers just because we don't assume they know what's going on. And, the whole idea that it's surprising how many people don't really understand how the utilities work in their own buildings. And we try to be helpful with that and stay involved where we can be helpful with that. But in the end, of course, it's our customers' responsibility to make sure that they've got the appropriate equipment installed in their facilities. Our responsibility kind of ends after the meter, and it's not just our responsibility, but our authority to work with or work on any equipment that's after the meter too just isn't there. So, yeah, that there'll be some kind of balance, I think, between requiring our customers to get something done and have that be their responsibility, but also us staying involved to facilitate it and make sure it gets done in a timely way.
Sure. So that's another reason to have make sure we know how to contact them in a timely manner and set those expectations. I just wasn't really sure if it was like equipment that you said, here's your new equipment, you need to go get it installed, or is it a piece of equipment that they have to go out and obtain and get installed? I was unclear, at that level.
Let's try to go through a few examples. So if a customer has an off-peak heating system, for instance, what we install is a load control receiver that has a relay switch inside of it that's able to turn the electric supply on and off to the off-peak heater. And they have to have the equipment in place that provides for the storage of that when we turn it off, and so they can continue to heat their facility when we're controlling. And they also have to have the system wired in a way where that switch is only turning off power to their heat and not their entire system, and that we're able to meter the amount of energy that we send to that system separate from the amount of energy we're sending to everything else. So there's potentially some wiring, potentially some equipment, potentially some, and really most of these customers we would expect already have that in place because they signed up originally. But again, we find that over time, as we've gone back and visited some of these customers for whatever troubleshooting reason, things happen. You bought a house, you don't know what an off-peak system is. You have a problem, you call an electrician, they see the problem is this controller's not working, they disconnect it and bypass it. And we don't know, or at least I should say we didn't know, because we only had one-way communication on our old technology. But now we would know because we've got a much better system. We know if that relay is still connected to our system, whether it's open or closed, how much energy is going through it at any particular time.
So this really is not just a matter of them getting equipment and then you just checking that it's in okay. There is a piece that you potentially might need to have access into their home and actually install this load control receiver. You need to physically get in there, and someone from the city puts that in?
We usually put them on the outside of the house. So it's not that we have to get in, but in order to know that it's wired correctly and that when we connect it, it's only controlling the heat and that we're metering the heat separately from the rest of it, someone needs to know how the wiring in the house is going. And it's an electrician that generally would have to check that for us.
So the city aligns for that electrician to come in, or the user has to make arrangements for that electrician and then just show you proof that it's been done and it's right? In the past, we've been bringing an electrician with us to help and make sure that if there's any real simple wiring that needs to get done and just to make sure that everything's hooked up correctly. If there's
remedial work that needs to be done on the customer's facilities, then it's up to them to get that.
To do it. Okay. So the city actually, someone from the PUC and an electrician that you hire goes into the home and does that inspection. And then if something still isn't right, then the owner has to get it figured out, and you come back one more time to make sure it's all working correctly.
Yeah, that's our
Okay.
business right there.
Yeah.
And,
all right.
and wasn't some of this necessitated with the old system just not working well or not working at all?
Yeah, that's right. The old system,
So,
I mean, it was working on and off, and it for the past couple of years we haven't attempted to even use it.
okay. So that's the piece of it to me that makes me feel like it's a joint responsibility as far as finances, because I kind of feel like that is part of our role.
Well, it seems like then there's an ongoing process that will be established out of this anyways, right? I mean, now it sounds like when something doesn't work, you get alerted or whatever, so you'll know sooner, but you still want to have a documented process of this is what it means and who's, so you can easily tell a homeowner whose responsibility is to do what and expectations, and, it should work better in the future if issues come up for a variety of reasons, like the fact that now you will know faster when their system is not working correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right way to think of it?
I think so.
Great. So
So
Mike, you'll bring us a plan to the next meeting and that we can review as a commission. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to do or discuss on this right now?
If you want to have that separate from the idea of how you respond to folks that are looking for relief from the surcharges, you could potentially. I mean, I think there's at least 2 customers who are expecting a yes or no on a rebate from us. So,
Sure.
And we can tell them just hang tight, and we'll be deciding soon based on the results of this. Or if you want to have that be a separate question, you could.
I think it's separate.
Yeah, I do too, actually.
I think we do need to get that part finished up.
Well, again, I think I said this before, but I'll state it again, is that I think we have partial responsibility here, and given the fact that it's been a very unusual time and the fact that we're a public utility, I think we should give them at least half of the money back. Tracy?
I'm good with that. I think shows both directions a little bit of acknowledgement and let's just make this move forward.
Mike, what's your feeling?
Well, we can make happen whatever you want us to on the amount that you want to credit back to folks. For the 33 that we haven't yet heard from, are we just going to surprise them with a credit, and then do we continue to charge a surcharge, or do we put them back on the off-peak and dual fuel rates until we've decided they either meet or don't meet our expectations? I mean, the whole strategy here was that this was a way for us to get people to communicate with us about the status of their system. And for the most part, I think that actually worked. But for these 33, what do you want us to do?
So obviously I wasn't here for your strategy, and I didn't realize that was a strategy. But I would say that it probably, it might have been effective. I'm not so sure I agree with that. I think we need to communicate, and I understand now the kind of, where do we sit with the 33? That doesn't make our money answer quite so cut and dry. But I think right now the first thing is, it shouldn't be 30 days from now. Well, there should be an effort to get right in front of these people again right now. I mean, do you have contact information for these 33? I would be more than happy to say that we need to hear from you within the next 30 days. but that has to be communicated to them very clearly, and we need to know that they got that communication, not just, oh, I sent it out. I mean, an acknowledgement back from them. Maybe not whatever they want to do, but just to know that they got that communication. If it's an email, if it's a phone call, whatever, an outreach, and let them know, to me, you've got 30 days to let us know if you intend to continue with this or not. And then we'll be going forward. That's my first thought. I mean, you're right, Mike, it's not like super clear cut. I get you're an issue here, but I think we kind of need to level set a little bit and then keep moving forward.
Well, I'm hearing you very loud and clear that you want us to have good communication, and that's going to require us to have useful contact information with folks. And we're going to work on that, but we don't right now. So we don't have emails and phone numbers for the majority of our customers. We don't ask for that as a way to sign up. Obviously, we're going to have to from now on, to particularly for customers who want to sign up for things like this. And that'll be part of what we'll show you next month. But in the meantime, the only way we can be sure that we get a message to person and know that they received it is to send a certified letter. So if that's what you think, I mean, if you want to make sure there's been communication, that's what I would suggest. We send a certified letter the next 33 and say, if we hear from you, we're going to rebate half of the surcharge and not charge it anymore from you. And if we don't hear from you, we're going to remove you from the list for off-peak and dual fuel and just charge you regular rates.
Any thoughts, Anne?
Well, I like the idea of a certified letter or something to make sure. I also totally agree that going forward, if we're having this kind of complicated setup financially and with equipment with people, we need to be able to reach them in a couple different ways. So we need to insist on a phone number and insist on an email, promise them we're not going to use it for marketing or, whatever, or sell it to people or whatever, but we have to have that contact information. I mean, I've never worked with another, well, anyway. So yeah, I agree. I'm just wondering, is that the right, I mean, is a certified letter maybe followed up with a phone call, except we don't have phone numbers? Like of the 33, what's your estimate on how many people we have phone numbers for? 5?
My estimate would be none.
Okay.
Hayden, do you have another thought on that?
No, I was muted. Anyway, I don't know. Best guess, I think the real issue is transferring our system. Before I came here, we definitely didn't require phone numbers to be recorded, and we do get phone numbers now. But that doesn't mean some of our super old customers, we have contact info.
Sure.
My best guess is I could probably come up with 50% of these phone numbers.
Okay.
Just because some of them are businesses, so we can find them that way, and Google and that shenanigans. But yeah.
Yep. Sure. That's pretty easy. Okay.
All right. I mean, I think that would be a good start, the certified letter idea.
And, if you got a phone number, call them. Can't hurt, even if you're leaving a message. Any outreach is worth it. And I mean, that means if they're businesses, they probably have an email or a website as well. Contact us potentially through their business website. So there are ways to get to people. Do you need some of us to go knock on doors? Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. And we don't usually have trouble getting in touch with folks because it's a small town, right? And there's just other ways of knowing how to get in touch with folks.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just not something that we've had as a necessity.
Sure.
Like Hayden said, most of our customers are, I think he called them really old, but most of our customers have been our customers for a while.
Right.
And
You didn't mean
Long
literally
time.
old. You
Long
just
time.
meant there. Yeah. I'll get it.
Okay. Well, is that a plan to go forward? And then for the folks that reached out to the city specifically, should we reach out to them and offer to forgive half of it? Or what? What do you
Well, I
think?
mean, it's not a negotiation, right? You get to decide. So
Right.
you tell
I
me
know,
what you
I'm just
want,
trying to
and then
talk
we'll
about
call
it.
them up right away and let them know what you told us to do.
Okay.
And, they fall in the same, I think this falls also to what you're asking, Mike, I think, is we will need to have a timeline for which they need, if they say, yes, we want this, then we need a timeline for which they need to get their part done, right? It
Yes,
can't be, indefinitely, yeah, I want to do it, and then nothing
yeah.
happens.
But I'd still say the ball is in our court on that. I don't think we could just set our customers loose and know that we're going to be able to check on all of them in a certain amount of time yet. So really, that's going to be the focus of our planning efforts before next meeting, is to figure out what's realistic for us there and to communicate that to you.
Okay. Yeah, like your resource is, in other words, you have resource issues, right, as well?
How are
Okay.
we going to get, an electrician? How long will it take? How many are we going to try and do? And we're not going to wait until next month to get started on this. We're working on it continuously, but we'll just have a plan that can explain it a little better for you next month.
Yeah. So it's not just their time frame that you can kind of put a line to. Your consideration also is city staff as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And really,
Okay.
that this was never intended to take a year, right, to charge a surcharge to people. It was really intended to be, we were going to work through this list in a matter of a few short months, and then there'd be a couple of people that were tricky, and then we'd be talking about when do we cut them off the rate altogether, not keep a surcharge forever. So
Yeah.
it's good that we're getting to the point now where we're transitioning on to what's next.
Sure. So do you feel you have enough now to go forward with this?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Great. Next topic. Late fee and shut-off policy.
Yeah, another continuation from last meeting. So last meeting we started talking about this. It was just an introduction. We sort of expected that there was going to be a period of time for us to think about and make decisions about this. There was no need to instantly make decisions, but we know that at some point we will again be charging late fees and doing shutoffs with our customers, and we want to figure out what that transition looks like. So last meeting, you looked at some of the information about those customers, like how many are there and what are the balances, and now we said, well, we'll come back with some ideas on ways to transition that. So we've got just two issues again, shutoffs and late fees, and a couple of maybe a range of ideas, just a guide conversation for each of them. But just as an aside, the background again, we made this decision at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was done in discussion with other municipals. Kind of all the municipal organizations talked about, are we going to do this? Because municipal utilities are not regulated by the state PUC. They can't force us to do it. And we didn't want to have municipals kind of standing out as acting differently than other utilities. So, and have the state be tempted to change that. And so the municipals all kind of agreed that this is the way to go. We're going to suspend shutoffs and late fees. But again, nobody knew in March last year how long a pandemic was going to be, what kind of effect it was going to have. And now we're starting to see, well, first of all, it's going to be really long, and we don't know for sure when it's going to end now, but we can see some signs that it's going to end. And we also know a lot more about how our economy functions here locally in the pandemic, and who's affected and who's not affected. And so hopefully that with that information, we can start talking about this transition a little bit better. So when do we start shutting people off? Generally, every year we have this cold weather rule is really the driver of that conversation for us. So it comes in October, people get, well, potentially, although rarely do we have a customer that actually meets all the actual state requirements to get protection, but we just sort of don't intend to shut off any of our residential customers from October 15th to April 15th. But then April 15th comes around, the cold weather protection ends, and we now have a series of customers, and we looked at what some of those balances look like historically, and our strategy is to make payment plans with as many of them as we can and get them caught up and not owing us a balance before the cold weather rule shows up again in October. Well, I don't know if that timing is going to work this year. So we thought, well, what if we said probably the most customer non-threatening way to do this would be no shutoffs as long as we have a local emergency declared. The city council declared it and they haven't taken it away yet. Obviously the state still has their emergency declared and they haven't ended it either. We could also differentiate between residential and commercial customers. The cold weather rule does. Our commercial customers actually don't have protection in the wintertime from cold weather rule. We don't usually shut them off in the winter anyway, but or we could also institute a policy where we'll start shutoffs, but only with customers with a particular balance, 1,000 or 500 or something. Or we could say April 15th, whether or not we're still under the emergency, we're going to start shutting customers off as normal. Or we could say, for commercial customers, we can actually start right now. So that's kind of the range of not very strict to as strict as I can imagine in terms of just feeling this out. Maybe to help, though, with the conversation, we'll have just Hayden talk a little bit about the steps that we go through with an individual customer before we would even consider shutting somebody off.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Okay, so pre-COVID, we would calculate penalties at the, right after the due date. Everybody who paid or everybody who didn't pay would get the penalty, the 8% penalty. And then I draw up a list of people who are more than 2 months behind. And we would send letters directly to those people who are more than 2 months behind saying, hey, get into contact with us by the second Wednesday of the month, or we're going to shut you off. That would normally eliminate about half of those people. And then post that, we would actually do a pink notice on their door and say, hey, please get in contact with us by the third Wednesday of the month, or we're going to shut you off. And that would normally eliminate another, 50% of the people that are left over. And then anybody left at the end of the month would be brought to Mike to see if we would shut him off. And that very, very rarely happened. I've been here 4 years now, and we've shut off 3 people. So,
and that's not during cold weather, right?
And that's not, no, during cold weather, it doesn't even, penalties are still calculated, but shut-offs, we just kind of bump it down the road till the end of cold weather. So,
So if Hayden then brings one to me and says, we haven't heard from this customer, we've posted them, I look at it and I think, well, that is a pretty tough balance, and we don't want to allow this to continue. It's not in anybody's best interest to let that balance grow. Then we'll start to move towards shutting somebody off. And before we would do that, we actually want to make personal contact with them. So, a letter is one thing. I actually do think most folks get that letter. But if they don't, a pink notice slapped on their door, I'm very confident people see that. But if they don't, when we send somebody to the house to actually effect the shutoff, we'll try and knock on doors and get in touch with people first. And we want to make sure that there's actually been an in-person conversation or a phone conversation with somebody before we would shut them off. It just turns out that it's often the same group of people that we're talking to here. And so we do have contact information with a lot of them. And it doesn't, our goal is not obviously to shut people off. We want to avoid that as much as possible. But what our actual goal is to get paid, is to find a way for that customer to be able to pay for the services that they've purchased. And so throughout that whole process, we're referring folks to the local resources that they have available to them, including the county and AEOA and the state's heating assistance and other places where they have an opportunity to get some help. We don't have, the PUC doesn't have a program where we offer our customers help, but we do have access to a lot of those programs. We know how they work. And so oftentimes those shutoff notices actually end up being something that we put together purposely with a customer so that they can bring it to those places where aid is offered and show them, I have a shutoff notice, I need help. That's actually, some of the programs require that. And I think we've been very successful in avoiding shutoffs where we can. That it's after this year of COVID, we looked at the numbers of where we're at, and it's not like we're 5 times what we would expect. We're 80% higher than we've been in the past. So it's enough to get our attention and think we'll probably have to handle this differently. And there may be some of these customers that have more trouble than we've had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly not an epidemic. The vast majority of our customers are still able to pay on time. We're going to end up with a few dozen people we're dealing with here.
I have one comment or question, which is between the pink slip and sending out somebody to actually effect the shutoff, is an attempt made to chat with them by phone?
Well, it's kind of concurrent with sending someone to shut them off. The original goal of the sending someone is to get in touch with them.
Okay.
So when our staff person gets to their house, rather than just go pull the meter, we try and knock on the door and say, hey, I need to shut you off unless you can figure out how to come and make a payment plan with us. And most of the time that works. And if we can't, if the person doesn't find them, we're still trying to actually contact them, track them down, talk to them by phone, find where they are and talk to them however we can to make that actual personal contact before we would just pull a meter.
Good. My other question is, in this memo you put in our packet, and it says, we sent notice attached via certified mail. There's nothing here attached, and I just wondered what the notice said.
Oh, no. Well, it's pretty short, so I'll get it here and I'll read it to you quick.
Okay. That would be great. I figured it was short. Talk quietly among yourselves. Sorry.
Well, that might take me a minute to find it.
Okay.
Patrick's not here today. Otherwise, he'd find it in an instant for me.
Okay. But it's pretty short and just says.
What we basically said was, we haven't heard from you in a while, or you've accumulated a pretty sizable balance, and the PUC is starting to talk about when to reinstitute late fees and shutoffs. We'd really like to hear from you.
Okay.
That's basically it.
Okay.
Right.
Contact us and make arrangements.
And I think that this was probably covered last time, and I'm sorry to ask it again, but 21 customer addresses for a total of about how much money that is owed?
We didn't cover that last time. The 21 was a slightly different selection than some of the ones we looked at.
Okay.
I'm gonna just take a stab at this and say it's probably about 20 grand.
Okay.
So just to begin with, I think that one of your first questions was, are we going to start a policy again, or are we going to wait? Was that part of your question?
Yeah, that's definitely,
okay.
When are we going to start again?
So I'll just share that I think we need to start it now, that I don't think where we're at now is any different than any other year, and we need to get active on it. However we plan this out, I don't think we do anyone a favor by letting this go. From all the collection work I did in the store, there gets to be a point where people become paralyzed and nothing happens, or it's just too overwhelming, or, So I think part of meeting them halfway or just working with them is stopping it before it gets unmanageable, as best you can, right? So to me, we need to, whatever our plan is, it should start as you normally would as far as time goes. If there's another way we implement it, that's fine, but I definitely think we should.
We can't really do anything as far as until April 15th though, right?
No, we would normally would start now, and so the letter that we sent out, that's about the right timing for us. April 15th is like the first day we might be knocking on somebody's door to pull the meter, but
Okay.
it's March where we're trying to reach them and say, hey, April 15th is coming around the corner. Let's figure out a payment plan. So we're in the right spot there still.
Yeah, things take time.
Yeah.
And if you're going to work back and forth, and you don't always want to have that conversation be, headed to the pit. You don't want to be talking, the worst possible end to all of it, right? So starting that conversation and understanding that it needs to be addressed should start as soon as possible. Not because we think it's leading to some, shut off piece, but just because we want to get engaged and get working on it in a partnership as much as possible.
Your list of late fee policy possibilities, the 4 different ones there. I kind of like the idea of tying it to having like no late fees if you've got some kind of a payment plan in place. I think that if that's possible, that makes a lot of sense to me. It would incentivize people to have it, like, look, we'll waive all these fees if you can get a plan in place with us. Is that reasonable or?
Or it's rebated if you pay, if you agree to a plan, which I agree might needs to be taken care of, and I think well before October or whatever that later fall date is. If you agree, if you accomplish that, then there are no fees. They get rebated or however you want to express it. It's one thing to have a plan, it's another to act on it. So if you act on it and you accomplish it to me, then yeah, okay, no fees. I'd go for that. Or is that not workable? Too much tracking?
I think we could figure out how to make that work. Personally, this one's trickier for me than the shutoffs, because we said we weren't going to charge late fees. Right. I could easily see a customer say, well, you said you weren't going to charge late fees, so
I'm sorry.
Me late
yeah,
fees.
I agree. I am not really comfortable with that, what you just said, Tracy, because of that, because the city did declare emergency. Is there any discussion? I'm sorry, I read the review of the city council meeting on WTIP, but I didn't attend the meeting, so I don't know. Was it discussed to lift the emergency?
No.
Okay, never mind. Scratch that. I just missed that part.
No, but I like your idea, Tracy, of trying to. Or it's really both of your ideas, I guess, of trying to use this as a way to incentivize what we're looking to have happen. So, we could find maybe there's a middle ground here where we say, starting April billing, we are going to charge late fees, and if you make a payment plan with us that you stick to, then by the end of October, if you've completed the payment plan that you said you were going to do, then we'll rebate those late fees that have accumulated in the meantime. So normally, we're still charging late fees on someone who's giving us a payment plan because they're still in arrears. That it's we're lucky if we get all the current charges plus payment plan for folks. It's often more of a, I don't have anything right now, and I'll come back in a little bit with more. So. Yeah, we can think about that. I think, that, like I said, that one's tougher for me. Figure out what's the best way to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you asked, and it's not like we're talking about lifting the emergency. It's still in place, and the council hasn't made any indication that they're talking about changing that.
Okay. Well, I
Okay.
mean, so I don't think we could in good conscience suddenly start imposing late fees. Not, unless we give people some notice and offer them the plan, like we said, or something.
It's the late fees on the previous balances that are the tough part for me. I think we could, if you wanted to, Tracy, your idea that it's time to get serious about this again. Late fees are an important way to do that. And, the idea of waiving late fees initially in the emergency was based on a lot of fear and unknown, and was just being really careful because things could be very bad. And I think, we're very bad for some people. But
Yes.
now we know what it looks like here locally in particular. And maybe that, if we had known what we knew now, would we have done the same thing? I'm not sure.
Sure. And nobody did. You're absolutely
No.
right. I think we all, I personally really thought, yeah.
Well, I think, I
Very
think
negative.
we erred on the side, of being compassionate and trying to take care of the community. So I don't think we have anything to feel bad about, but I don't think we can turn around and ask for late fees now either, because we said we'd waive them.
Well, late fees from before or late fees going forward?
From before.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. Now I get that. I
Yeah.
totally track on that.
Yeah.
But if we do consider going forward after we have asked for them, maybe it's that first outreach and ask for a payment plan. And if the payment plan isn't in place, then the fees start. And the only way they will be rebated if you get a plan and you get it done within the time, something like that.
Yeah, why don't you let us noodle on that and figure out how we can put that together.
Okay.
Now, are there any particular customers that have reached out and are looking for an answer on this now?
No.
Okay. It's different than the previous issue.
Yeah, the previous issue is them looking for us to give them money.
Okay.
And this one is us looking for them to give us money.
All right. Okay. Is there any further discussion on that? Anything we should review? Well, now we get to the fun guest part of the meeting. Woohoo!
Can I just...
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to bring up one thing really quickly. Sorry to interrupt the fun part. When we talk about contact information, and maybe this is what Hayden, you're already saying, but when I think of all the new homeowners we have, how many homeowners aren't here most of the time? In my block alone, there are at least 4 of those. And then just, the whole seasonality and new people. I think if we don't, we should have a real drive to make sure we have contact information from all of our customers. I think of my neighbor next door who's seasonal, and if somebody hadn't caught the water meter a couple of years ago just gushing, he would have never known his basement was just flooding all to heck, and luckily somehow the city got a hold of him. But I think that's crucial that we need to, and users would have that expectation. I think they expect to be asked that. And with so many cell phones, it's not like you can look them up in a phone book anymore. But I think that should be something that the city should look into and make sure we have that kind of immediate contact information for any kind of electrical or utility related emergency as it comes forward. So that's my only thought.
I think that's a great point.
Yep, we hear you.
Okay. Now our simpler representative.
Hi, everybody.
Kelly, take it away.
So the only person I don't know is Tracy. So nice to meet you, Tracy. And I will say it was interesting to hear the other side of things that I never hear about, but I'm interested in. So, the whole thing with COVID and people not being able to pay their bills. And I think I'm tracking on the first one where you're trying to do more advanced metering issue stuff and load control, which is very interesting. but I don't typically, intersect with that stuff at SIMPA. I run around, I would say my job description is very broad, but the main push is to get the rebates going. And if you have questions about what drives those rebates, we can talk about it. But I can get really cynical, and then I can get really idealistic. I can be cynical in saying that the state requires every utility to have an energy saving program, and they have very specific goals for utilities. And it's a transaction. I'm going to give you money if you install energy efficient equipment. And I get to claim energy savings for the utility I'm working with. It's a great deal. And I run around sometimes and even chase rebates after the equipment's been installed, and they were going to do it anyway. But I need to claim the savings. So there's a little bit of, you can get that way, On the other hand, I've always been interested in these issues since I was in college. And I love to help people reduce their energy use. So I find it really fun. I want to see more businesses manage their energy use. And it's, Grand Marais is an easy place for me to work because I kind of think like a lot of the people in Grand Marais in terms of wanting what I think a lot of people here want. So easy, it's fun. I like coming up here. I live in Minneapolis. I come up every other month, and I drive up one day, run around, maybe a little bit, run around the first day, a full day of work, and then the third day I work a little bit in the morning and head home. This week I actually decided, it's been such a crazy year, I haven't gone anywhere. I decided to come up and stay a couple more days because it's got so much to do outside here. So I'm enjoying a little extra time just goofing around, skiing and walking along the lake, and that's very nice. If you don't know like how we get rebates, I hate to tell you this, but most of it's just LED lighting. It's nothing fancy. I track what % of energy savings are happening in each of the cities, and it's 60 to 70% lighting. And especially in a place like Grand Marais, there's going to be some cool stuff coming up this year. You all might know about people wanting to electrify our energy uses so that ultimately it can be renewable. But part of the thing that I'll work on is helping with the rebate programs for heat pumps, air source heat pumps for heating, water source heat pumps, not water source, heat pump water heaters. So if people have electric water heaters, and Mike's a great example of a person that's done it. He was the guinea pig, and it sounds like it went good. Yeah, still good.
It works great.
Yeah. So those are some things that can really help, in Grand Marais. You don't have a lot of industry here. In some of my cities I work in, they have, a lot of manufacturing, and you get a lot of these really very unique rebates for custom projects. But here it's going to be a lot of just, commercial businesses and residential, a lot of lighting. And these, other things, heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. I do a little bit with the chambers in the cities, try to promote, what SIMPA does. There's a lot of work focused on low income. I'll talk about that just briefly. Again, every utility has to support, have a special emphasis on low income. But it's all based on how big your utility is. And what happens with a lot of the smaller SIMPA cities is that the goal is very small. Like you can meet your goal with, a couple of refrigerators and you're done, Energy Star refrigerators. So it's a tricky one, but we're making connections with multifamily buildings. We're trying to get Arrowhead Economic Opportunity.
AEOA.
AEOA.
Yeah.
They should, well, I don't know. It's a long drive for them, right? But they have people that go in single family homes and help with weatherization, and that would be for heating, right? But while they're there, if they see an opportunity, they'll go, man, their refrigerator was really bad, and they could use a new one. And then what happens with that is that they would come back to us and say, we got some recommendations on the electric side. And then the city has the opportunity to say they would help pay for that. I mean, obviously, anyone can get a rebate through the regular channels. And cities can, even, I've had some cities like other ones where they had trouble meeting their goals. They decided to help buy some Energy Star window air conditioning for some multifamily buildings. They just paid for them. And instead of getting a rebate, they just got 4 units to replace some really old ones. But that gets weird when you only got to get 1 or 2. It's I still feel like I can probably find, I mean, this was what was funny this year, was we were thinking we didn't know how we were going to meet the low income goal. And then all of a sudden we find out that Sawtooth Ridges, which is a low income apartment building, is looking to get a total retrofit of all their lighting. And they will work with HUD to get the money. And, that's going to be a big project. It'll probably, it could cover 2 years worth of Grand Marais low income goals. But it's just a lot of it's, finding out what's going on in the city and talking to people. We do some promotions. We do a big holiday lighting promotion, and those get to be this really big rigmarole, where we put out posters and things like that, and we do a lot of mailing to the customers. And then there's a really nice lighting promotion in the fall, and it probably won't last very many more years because LED lighting is going to be probably required. We won't have incandescent bulbs, but from October to December, SIMPA subsidizes LED light bulbs, and they're just dirt cheap. And anybody in the area can buy them, and then that's a way for the utility to get credit for energy savings, and it's pretty popular. We got 2 places in Grand Marais that help us: the Home Store and Bucks.
Well, I'll tell you, Nancy, I was in Carolina for quite a few years, so I'm very familiar with both of those projects as I was in those stores doing that for you. So they are great programs and they sell well. Great. And yeah, so pretty familiar with both of them.
Good. Yeah.
Well, I hate to cut this short, but Hayden and I have a 4 o'clock engagement with our next public meeting. So.
Oh my God. Okay.
All right. Oh, Anne's muted.
Sorry. Do we need a motion to adjourn, or do we just adjourn?
I'm a big fan of the chairperson just saying, I see we're adjourned.
Okay. I see we're done. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Nancy.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.